Emily was a 27-year-old kindergarten teacher, living in a small rented apartment and making ends meet on a tight salary. She loved children, loved teaching, and loved quiet mornings with coffee and lesson plans. Her life was simple, but she was content. What most people didn't know was that Emily had been raised not by her parents, but by her grandparents, George and Mary. They weren't just her family, they were her heart. They had money, yes, but they never made it the center of their lives. They taught her that kindness was more important than wealth, and that character mattered more than comfort. Before we go deeper, where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more. Emily's parents, Thomas and Janet, were always around physically, but rarely there for her emotionally. Her dad was always working long hours, climbing the corporate ladder, while her mom spent most of her time at fancy events and social gatherings. "We provided everything for you," her mother once said, but Emily knew that what she needed was love, not just lunch money. Her real memories, the warm ones, were with her grandparents. George and Mary had a small 4-bedroom house surrounded by trees and a garden. Every summer and weekend, Emily would visit them. George taught her how to grow tomatoes in the backyard, while Mary showed her how to bake cookies and sew buttons onto shirts. They cheered for her at every school play and clapped the loudest at her soccer games. They had started a logistics company back in the 1970s with just one truck. Over time, they built it into a company with hundreds of trucks and warehouses. Yet George still drove an old pickup, and Mary still clipped coupons. That was just who they were. "Money is a tool, Emily, not a prize," George used to say. "Use it to do good, not to show off." That was a lesson Emily took to heart. But not everyone did. Her father, Thomas, had always expected to inherit everything. He hated that his parents were so careful with money. "They're cheap," he once said, slamming the door after another argument. When he demanded a senior role in their company and was told no, he left in anger and barely looked back. Meanwhile, they treated Emily differently. They paid her college fees but told her, "Do what you love." When she said she wanted to be a teacher, they smiled and said, "Perfect." Emily never stopped spending time with them. Sunday dinners were a tradition. She helped them learn how to use smartphones, taught them how to video chat, and laughed when George kept tapping the wrong button. Her grandparents' house was always her safe place. Her own apartment, though small, was cozy and filled with books and hand-me-down furniture. She didn't need much. She found joy in simple things like nature walks, animal shelter visits, and reading by the window. Her grandparents didn't interfere, but they supported her quietly, like the time they surprised her with snow tires before a storm. Then one Tuesday night everything changed. The police called. A drunk driver. Red light. George and Mary didn't survive the crash. Emily dropped the pen she was using to grade papers. Her hands shook. The officer on the phone spoke gently, telling her that George and Mary died instantly. "They didn't suffer," he said. But Emily felt like she was the one who couldn't breathe. The funeral was a blur. Her parents, Thomas and Janet, suddenly took control. They argued with the funeral director about flower arrangements and costs. Her younger brother, Ryan, flew in from California and barely looked up from his phone. Aunt Linda cried loudly for attention. Uncle Mark followed her around silently like always. None of them had visited George and Mary in years. Yet here they were, front and center, pretending grief. After the funeral, Emily didn't go into the house. She just couldn't. She drove back to her apartment, crawled into bed, and stared at the ceiling. Days passed like fog. Then came a call from Matthew Hill, her grandparents' longtime attorney. He asked if Emily and her immediate family could come to his office for the reading of the will. Emily agreed. She wasn't expecting much. Maybe a small amount of money. Few family keepsakes. George and Mary had never talked about inheritance. That wasn't their style. But the meeting that followed would shake her entire world and reveal just how much her grandparents truly saw her. The morning of the will reading was gray and rainy. Emily wore a plain black dress and carried the little umbrella her grandmother had once insisted she keep in her car. The law office was warm and quiet, set inside a cozy converted house. Matthew greeted her with a sad smile and a firm handshake. "George and Mary spoke of you often," he said, his eyes kind. "They loved you dearly, Emily. They were proud of you." Emily's voice caught in her throat. Before she could reply, the door burst open. Her family had arrived in full. Thomas led the pack, checking his expensive gold watch like he had better places to be. Janet followed behind, carrying a designer purse that probably cost more than Emily's rent. Ryan strolled in behind them wearing sunglasses indoors. His shirt was wrinkled. His attitude was louder than his words. Aunt Linda was on her phone, talking about a golf club scandal. Uncle Mark gave Emily a small nod, then looked away quickly. "Let's get this over with," Thomas said. "Some of us have work to do." Matthew nodded and motioned everyone into the conference room. The tension in the air was thick as storm clouds. Everyone sat around a large wooden table. Thomas took one end like it belonged to him. Emily quietly chose a seat near Matthew. The rest filled in, lining up as if taking sides in a courtroom. "Before I begin," Matthew said calmly, "I need to confirm that George and Mary were of sound mind when they updated this will. They went through several legal and medical evaluations to make sure of that." "Just read it," Thomas snapped. "We all know how this goes. He was my father. I get the company. Let's not waste time." Matthew opened a leather folder. What he read next would leave the room in stunned silence. "I, George Clark, and I, Mary Clark, being of sound mind and body, declare this our final will and testament." Matthew read slowly, clearly. The legal language stretched on for a while. Revocations, appointments, definitions. Then he paused before the big reveal. "We hereby leave our entire estate, totaling $26 million in cash, investments, property, and business shares, to our beloved granddaughter Emily Rose Carter." A hush fell over the room. Emily blinked. She looked around, unsure if she'd misheard. Matthew continued, "We make no provisions for our son, Thomas Carter, daughter-in-law Janet Carter, grandson Ryan Carter, daughter Linda Collins, or son-in-law Mark Collins. This has to be a joke." Thomas jumped from his chair, face red. "Let me see that." He snatched the papers from Matthew's hands, flipping through them. "This can't be right." Janet gasped. "All of it? To a schoolteacher?" Ryan slammed his hand on the table. "What about me? I need capital for my startup." Aunt Linda glared at Emily. "What did you do to them? What did you say?" Emily couldn't even speak. She just stared at the table. Her grandparents had left her everything. All of it. Matthew held up a remote. "There's more," he said calmly. "They recorded a message for this moment." The screen came to life. George and Mary sat side by side on their living room sofa. "If you're watching this, we're no longer here," George said gently. "We wanted to explain our decisions in our own words." Mary nodded. "Thomas, Linda, we love you. But we've been deeply disappointed in the choices you've made, and how you've treated us and each other." They spoke clearly, lovingly, but with firm truth. They talked about years of being used, ignored, and disrespected. "Emily," Mary continued, "is the one who shows up, listens, and lives with the values we believe in." George looked into the camera. "We built our business from nothing. Not for luxury but for security and service. Emily understands that. She never asked us for anything. She just loved us." Mary smiled softly. "We believe she will honor what we've built. She will help others. She will carry our legacy forward." The video ended. Silence returned. Thomas broke it by shouting, "They were manipulated. Sinel. This will is garbage. We'll fight it." Matthew calmly replied, "They passed medical evaluations. Every signature is legal. Contesting this will be expensive, public, and unlikely to succeed. But that's your choice." Janet suddenly changed her tone. "Emily, sweetheart, this isn't right. Your grandparents were confused. Of course you'll share the money with the family, right?" Ryan leaned forward. "Yes, sis. It's not just yours. Aunt Linda sniffed. You can't possibly manage all that money. Be reasonable. Emily felt the pressure rising. I didn't know about any of this, she said. I need time to think. There's nothing to think about, Thomas barked. This is family money. I built this company with them. Matthew touched Emily's arm gently. You don't need to decide anything now. Take time. And remember, you're not alone in this. The meeting ended in chaos. Accusations flew. Thomas threatened legal action. Janet cried angry tears. Ryan muttered under his breath. Aunt Linda yelled about fairness. Matthew finally stood up and asked everyone to leave. Emily needs space, he said firmly. One by one they stormed out. But Thomas paused before reaching the door. He turned and grabbed Emily's arm hard. This isn't over, he hissed. Come to our house tonight. 6 o'clock sharp. We're sorting this out. As a family. His grip tightened. Emily nodded stiffly, her heart pounding. She knew that tone. It wasn't a request. It was a warning. They left in luxury cars. Shiny, expensive machines that sparkled in the rain. Emily sat alone in her old sedan, clutching the thick envelope Matthew had given her. Inside were documents, keys, and contact details. Her hands shook as she started the engine. She didn't drive home. Instead, she wandered aimlessly for hours. Through side streets, familiar parks, and past the school where she taught. Her thoughts raced. Her heart ached. She didn't ask for this inheritance. She didn't even know it existed. By the time the clock neared 6, she found herself pulling into her parents' massive driveway. Their house stood like a palace. Cold, spotless, all glass and stone. Not a home, just a statement. She took a deep breath, grabbed the envelope and stepped inside. The living room was formal and quiet. Thomas stood by the fireplace with a drink in hand. Janet perched on a pristine cream chair. Ryan lounged on the sofa, tapping on his phone. Aunt Linda paced. Uncle Mark stood by the window, silent. Sit down, Thomas said. Emily obeyed, choosing a seat near the exit. She felt like a lamb in a room full of wolves. Her palms were sweating. Let's be reasonable, Thomas began. His voice smooth like a salesman. Your grandparents were confused. They didn't mean to leave everything to you. We're your family, Emily. It should be shared. Janet jumped in, smiling sweetly. We're not trying to take it all. Just what's fair. You could have a lovely little house instead of that cramped apartment. Emily said nothing. Her silence encouraged them. Thomas leaned forward. Here's the plan. You transfer the estate to me. I'll manage everything. You keep 10%. That's more than enough for someone like you. Ryan laughed. Exactly. You're a teacher, not a banker. Emily's eyebrows raised. 10%, she asked softly. That's still over $2 million, Thomas replied. Be grateful. Ryan stretched his arms. I need at least $5 million to launch my new cryptocurrency app. It's gonna change the world. Emily stared at him. The last app he made involved raiding public bathrooms. It failed after blowing through thousands of their parents' money. Aunt Linda spoke next. The house should come to us. My kids need better schools. Emily blinked. Her cousins didn't even know her grandparents' address. They'd never visited once. When demands didn't work, they tried guilt. After all we've done for you, Janet whispered, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. We raised you, paid for your braces, summer camps, private school. You owe us, Emily. Emily clenched her jaw. When's the last time either of you called to check on me? Or showed up to anything I cared about? Her father's face changed. This isn't a negotiation anymore. You'll sign the transfer document tonight. Or we'll contest the will. And we'll dig into every visit you made to George and Mary. Every word you said. You'll regret making us your enemy. The air turned cold. The threat was clear. But something inside Emily stirred. She remembered George's voice years ago at the playground. Stand your ground, Emmy. No one can take your dignity unless you give it away. Suddenly Uncle Mark spoke. Maybe we should all calm down. Let her think. Thomas snapped. Stay out of it, Mark. This is real family business. I am family, Mark said softly, then fell silent under Thomas's glare. Time ticked by. Ryan pulled out his laptop and began typing. Aunt Linda scrolled through house listings. Ooh, I'll knock this wall down, she said. At 10:30 p.m., Thomas slid a printed document across the table. Sign this, he ordered, handing her a pen. Emily read it carefully. Gave him full control of everything. Her share wasn't guaranteed. This isn't fair, she said, looking around. It's more than fair, Thomas growled. Sign it now, or you're out of this family. Emily stood up slowly. Her voice was clear. No, I won't sign it. My grandparents trusted me. I won't betray them. Silence followed. Janet gasped. Ryan swore. Aunt Linda sobbed dramatically. Thomas's face turned red. He slammed his glass so hard it cracked. You ungrateful girl, Thomas yelled, standing so close she could feel his breath. You manipulated them. This innocent act won't work. His finger jabbed the air. You have one last chance, Emily. Sign this or get out. You can't have both the money and the family. Emily scanned their faces. Angry, cold, bitter. No one showed love. Not even a sliver. Then I guess I'm already not family, she said, picking up her things. I'm sorry, but I'm not giving in. Thomas laughed bitterly. Don't forget that apartment you live in. We own it through our company. Your lease ends tonight. Emily froze. What? That's right, Janet chimed in. 30 minutes to get out. After that, we change the locks. Ryan smirked. Better move fast, sis. 26 million won't keep you warm tonight. Her heart dropped. They really meant it. She packed silently. Toothbrush, papers, photos, one bag, then another, then one more. Thomas stood in the hallway, arms crossed like a prison guard. Janet was already on the phone with a realtor about selling George and Mary's home. You were never really family, Thomas muttered. Just an obligation we kept for appearances. Emily's stomach twisted. But she didn't look back. As she stuffed her last few clothes into a bag, Thomas leaned against the doorframe watching her. You think this money makes you powerful, he sneered. You'll regret this when you're alone and broke. Emily didn't reply. She grabbed her grandmother's handmade quilt and folded it gently. She wouldn't leave that behind. Downstairs, Janet was sipping tea, completely unbothered. We spent thousands raising you, she said. Your braces, dance classes, which you were terrible at, by the way. Consider this the end of our investment. Ryan blocked the front door as she approached. That money's going to burn a hole through your little teacher brain, he laughed. Enjoy the crash. Emily walked past him without a word. Her hands were full. Bags slung across both shoulders, another clutched in her hand. She turned one last time at the front door. Her family stood behind her like a wall of stone, cold, unforgiving. Janet spoke with a smug smile. You might have money now, but family is forever. One day you'll wish you hadn't pushed us away. Emily looked directly at her. I'm not the one throwing family away, she said softly. You are. She stepped outside. The door slammed behind her like a final judgment. The night air was cool. Her breath came out in shaky puffs. She sat in her old car, bags piled in the back, hands trembling on the steering wheel. And then the tears came. Hot, painful, unstoppable. Her body shook with sobs, for her grandparents, for the family she never really had, and for the unbearable weight of it all. It felt like she had gained millions but lost everything else. She had nowhere to go. Her apartment was gone. Her support system had just cut her off like a branch they no longer needed. After minutes, maybe hours, she wiped her face and reached for the thick envelope Matthew had given her earlier. Inside was a set of keys, attached to a small bunny-shaped keychain her grandmother had carried for years. The keys to their house. Her house now. Her hands trembled again, but this time with hope. She started the car and drove toward the place that had always felt like home. As she pulled into the familiar driveway, the porch light clicked on, still set on the same timer her grandfather had installed years ago. The house stood still and quiet. She hesitated at the door, the key cold in her hand. But she turned it. The lock clicked. The door opened. The smell hit her first, lemon and wood polish, just as she remembered. She closed the door behind her gently. No voices greeted her, no footsteps. Only silence. She walked through the hallway slowly, almost reverently. The house looked exactly the same. In the guest room she always used, her book still sat on the nightstand, halfway through a chapter. Fresh towels folded neatly. A bottle of lotion by the bed. Her grandmother had prepared for her next visit. Emily sat on the bed, still wearing her shoes and coat, and let the tears fall again. This time for love. She must have cried herself to sleep. Morning sunlight poured through the curtains, warm and bright. For a split second, she expected to smell pancakes and hear her grandfather whistling in the kitchen. But there was only silence. Her phone buzzed. Dozens of missed calls and messages lit up the screen, most from her parents and Ryan. Some were threats. Others were sugary sweet apologies. "Let's talk about this calmly," one message from Janet read. "Be reasonable." Another from Thomas. "You have 24 hours before legal action begins." But the one from Ryan chilled her. "Enjoy the house. Not for long." Emily forwarded Ryan's message to Matthew immediately. His reply came in seconds. "Do not open the door for anyone. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Just knowing he was on his way brought her comfort. She went downstairs to wait. At exactly 9 a.m. Matthew arrived, holding a briefcase in one hand and a coffee tray in the other. "First things first," he said, handing her a cup. "You did the right thing, Emily. And your grandparents made sure you'd be protected." She wrapped her hands around the warm cup. "They kicked me out," she whispered. "I have nowhere else." Matthew nodded. "I expected that. That's why your grandmother made sure there was a backup plan." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a deed. 5 years ago, she bought a small cottage outside town. It's in a trust under your name. Your father doesn't know it exists. If you need a safe place, that's it. Emily felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time from relief. She wouldn't be homeless after all. She wouldn't be alone. "There's something else," Matthew said, standing. "Your grandparents weren't just thinking ahead with money. They left you people. Community. Support. You'll see." Just then a knock came at the back door. Emily tensed. Matthew smiled. That would be Carlos. Emily opened the door to find a man in his early 50s, salt and pepper hair under a cap, and gentle brown eyes. "Miss Emily," he said, holding his hat respectfully. "I'm so sorry about your grandparents. They were good people." She nodded, trying to hold it together. "Thank you, Carlos. I'm overwhelmed." He smiled kindly. "Mr. George and Mrs. Mary asked me to watch over the house. I've been keeping the place up. And I'm here for you too. Anything you need." Carlos joined them in the kitchen. As they sat at the old breakfast nook, he shared stories Emily had never heard. How her grandparents donated to the local school anonymously, helped neighbors pay hospital bills, and left groceries at strangers' doors during the recession. "They never wanted attention," Carlos said. "Just wanted to help quietly." Matthew nodded. "They built more than a business. They built a legacy. And they trusted you with it." Carlos added. "Your father and brother came here after the funeral. Took watches, electronics. But they didn't know the cameras were upgraded last year." Emily's eyes widened. "You have footage?" Carlos nodded. "All of it." Carlos led Emily to the small study off the hallway. Her grandmother's desk sat untouched, her favorite pen still resting in its holder. Behind a row of books, Carlos pulled out several leather-bound journals. "She documented everything," he said softly. "Every visit, every conversation. Especially the ones with your father." Emily flipped open the first one. Her grandmother's elegant handwriting filled the pages. In one entry, she described how Thomas had demanded money for a brilliant investment, and how, when denied, he accused them of favoring Emily. But Emily never asked for a penny, the entry read. She brings food, stories, and love. That's all she ever wanted. The front doorbell rang. Carlos answered, then returned with an older woman in a simple dress. Miss Dorothy, he said. Their housekeeper for 20 years. Dorothy hugged Emily tightly. You look just like Mary when she was young, she whispered. More visitors followed. Rosa, their former business partner. George Patel, their financial advisor. Sarah, the neighbor next door. Each one brought more than just paperwork or casseroles. They brought truth, love, and stories. Your grandparents left you more than money, Rosa said. They left you their people and their purpose. Emily looked around. This was her family now. They spent the day preparing, gathering documents, reviewing security footage, organizing the journals. At 4 p.m., a message from Ryan buzzed Emily's phone. We're coming tomorrow morning. Don't try to stop us. It'll get ugly. She showed it to Matthew. His face turned serious. They've crossed a legal line. But your grandparents expected this. And now we activate the final part of their plan. That evening Matthew made calls. Rosa printed statements. Dorothy cleaned the living room. Carlos checked the locks. Emily stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, finally ready to sleep in the space where love once lived. The next morning came crisp and bright. At 9 a.m., Matthew returned with coffee, pastries, and a calm confidence. At 9:30, Judge Henderson arrived, followed by Police Chief Maria and financial advisor Thomas Jang. One by one, the house filled with supporters. At exactly 10 o'clock, tires crunched the gravel driveway. 4 cars arrived, her parents, Ryan, Aunt Linda, Uncle Mark. They entered expecting control. But they found witnesses, documentation, and unwavering truth. When they tried to shout, Judge Henderson shut them down. Your parents planned for this. And they left everything airtight. Any challenge will fail. And be made public. Emily stepped forward, calm but strong. I'm not here to fight, she said. I'm here to honor the people who truly raised me. This estate is not a reward. It's a responsibility. And I will not give it to people who treated them like ATM machines. Thomas tried one last threat. Janet cried again. Ryan swore under his breath. But no one stood with them. Emily handed out envelopes with legal terms and boundaries. If you want a relationship, she said, it must be built on respect, not greed. One by one they left, defeated. As silence returned, Dorothy placed a cup of tea in front of her. They chose well, child, she said with a smile. Emily looked around at the warm faces who remained. It was not the family she was born into, but the one she had built through love, trust, and purpose. And that was worth more than any inheritance.